Thank you very much. And well, I'm sure, even if the audience is small, I have the nicest people of St. Petersburg in this room. Thank you very much for your introduction. And it's fun to work here with POMA, and I'm very honored to give this Köppen lecture here. So the theme of today is phosphorus, and there have been some very alarming calculation about the availability of phosphorus and the overuse of phosphorus. And phosphorus is really one element which limits life. Without phosphorus we can't exist, and no plants can't exist. And well, I would show you through the whole story of phosphorus, with its cycle, with its role in metabolism, its availability, the mining, the outlook, how long it will last. And you would see there's a big confusions in estimates, but we have to live with it. And I hope when the lecture is over, you don't know, you don't say like Harry Belafonte in one song, it is clear as mud, but it covers the ground. We see. Okay. We start with what are the typical impacts of humans on the earth, and phosphorus is a good example. It's more or less direct consumption of certain resources we have, like metals, oil, fish, or its consumption and of modified products, such as phosphor is modified into food. We consume it. It is redistributed with the waste, and partly in compartments of the Earth system, which we can't get it out again, namely the deep ocean floor. Okay, maybe that will change somehow. This is set the same, and I will get you through this topics of the phosphor cycle or of the phosphor story. I can't go into none of those in detail, but I'd rather like to show you the different aspects of this element. The element itself is the 10th most available element on the Earth, in the Earth's crust, the 17th most abundant in the universe. I don't know how people calculate that, but that's Google. And it is the 6th most from quantity, from mass element in our bodies, in our animal bodies, human bodies, sorry. And it has approximately, by weight, a percentage of 0.1% of the Earth's crust. And I will show you a calculation. That's a hell of a lot of phosphorus. Okay. It is in group 15 of the element of the periodic system of the elements. This is a phosphorus molecule, and it's interesting. We will come back on that later. That it's in this group with nitrogen, arsenic, antimony, and bismuth. Okay. So it has a few oxidation states, but it's exclusively available in bound form. There's no pure phosphorus that will burn immediately. And that's the one thing which makes it a little bit dangerous. It is what we are talking about today with the phosphorus mining and things like that. We mainly will deal here with appetite. Not for eat, apartheid, not appetite. Okay, and with others we will not touch. And it's readily oxidizable. We will see that is an important point in the phosphorus cycle. It has only one stable isotope. It has 7 radioactive isotopes with very short half-life times, because you can phosphorus use a spiking experiment in plants, how much phosphorus they will take up. You would use phosphorus 32, but it's a very nasty anisotropic form. And there are only traces in the atmosphere. We have no gaseous form of phosphorus. So that's important for its cycling. Okay, let's now look at a few graphs what phosphorus does in the metabolism of men and plants, or of animals and plants. What you see here is the homeostasis of phosphorus in a human For instance, there is a food intake of approximately 100 milligram daily, and it is in the intestine, in the digestive tract, it is extracted from the food and carried by a certain channel protein into other body compartments, into the soft tissue, into the blood, and into the bones. And the most phosphorus sit in the bones. Almost 80% of the phosphorus we eat goes into the bones and keep us upright, so to say. The kidney is a very important organ for phosphor control. It's filtering it's filtering the fluid, the body fluids, and it is reabsorbing absorbing approximately 1,000 milligrams. So it's twice going through the kidney. So that is a kind of recycle system to get the most phosphorus out of the body fluids, and then we excrete around 800 milligram per day. That approximately is the phosphorus cycle in a human body. The content in the plasma is 2.5 to 4.5 milligram per deciliter, and the body content is with this intake here is approximately 500 to 700 grams of our body, and 85%, as I mentioned before, is here sticking to the bones. The main task of the phosphorus in our metabolism is bone mineralization, which is not quite unimportant for our body. It's signal transduction in the metabolism. In the nucleotide metabolism, it will play an important role, and enzyme regulation. And the cell respiration, the respiration in the cell of the organic substance, is the main thing. Is what happens there is a controlled release of energy from organic compounds to form ATP, which is the power plant in this molecule, the power plant of our body. If we have a look at that a little bit closer, this is the magic, or you may call it the magic molecule. ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You see the three phosphates here in this, and here's the ribosa adenine and phosphate. And if you look at that in this graph, you see in this bound here is a little bit of energy. Here's a little bit more, and not more. And here, the last binding of the last phosphate molecule, there is a large energy which drives the body, and then it goes over to ATP and then with ATP, it's made energy again to oxidize this again to ADP. No, the ADP to ATP. So that is one of the most important enzyme in our body. Without nothing would run. So this is a cycle here, how it works. We have exergonic cellular respiration, as its energy is released from the cell, from cell processes in the individual cell. I should note that ATP is not diffusing through cell membrane. Every single cell in our body does produce its own ATP. It's a good coordination with the billions of cells. Okay, and there is cell energy as extra agonic cellular energy, puts energy into the cycle and makes, with the addition of inorganic phosphor molecule from ATP, the energizer here. Then you have, and this energy is fueled into the cell, fuel for endogenic processes in the cell. Energy derived from ATP is split here into ATP and mineral phosphorus, and it's taken up for cellular work, which the cell has to do. So that is the simple basic cycle. The energy here is done in the cell, which goes here, is needed for synthesis of molecules, such as DNA, RNA, and other proteins, quite, as we know, important molecules of our body for active transport. Pumping molecules mean extra. Active transport means pumping molecules against the pressure, against the gradient, which the diffusion would go the other way otherwise. So it works there, and the transport of lots of things in the cells, such as chromosomes and so forth. So that's really the tick of the life here. How is it produced? We go here, then over to the plants. In the light reaction of photoactive or photosynthetic plants, they foster the buildup of ADP and NADPH, and which is done here, which we can divide in that we can say the adenosine triphosphate is the energy supply, and the NADPH, the nicotine amide adenine nucleotide phosphate, is the electron transporter. I thought I was not smoking any longer, but you know, here we have a little bit to do with nicotine still, and this is as important as the ADP, the reduction and the oxidation of this acid transport. Then what follows then in the plants, what we then eat as organic substances, is the Calvin cycle, which means it is the formation of CO2 into sugars. So that's into sugars. This is the first step without light. This is light dependent, and then from here it's dark reactions, and this is brought about the carboxylase, it's that called, which happens there, and it's formed by this rubisco, which is formed with a lot of ADP molecules, and rubisco is one of the oldest enzymes. One thinks it's 3.8 billion years old, so very early in evolution of life it was. But then it goes further in the cell, and we come to the citric cycle, or it's also called the Krebs cycle. That's a chain of aerobic decomposition processes in a cell to maintain the energy supply. And you see that here a lot of ADP is formed again, and here the FHDH and the NADH are porting the cellular, the electron transport chain for the respiration, and so. And all these processes from the beginning on, and also in our bodies with the metabolism, is ADP, ADP, and NADP is a very important stuff which without our life clock wouldn't tick at all. Okay, let's go now for a while to the mineral and biological cycles of phosphorus on a larger scale. We do have here the marine and the terrestrial cycle. The marine cycle is not in detail, the terrestrial cycle, and we have a mineral and biological driven parts of that. We start here with phosphate, or phosphoric acid, which is gained from rocks, or in earlier time from guano, and we make fertilizer out of that, and this is going partly as inorganic phosphor in the rivers, washed out of the soil, which has not been used by the plants. There used to be, years ago, everybody thought, I grew up in a farm, and at that time we thought the more phosphorus the better, but the plants can take only a certain amount up there, and that is very better tuned in nowadays, so that you don't overfeed the soil, and not that much is washed out with the rain into the rivers and then into the sea. We have then here the runoff in the ocean, and then there starts the marine cycles, the river runoff. But it is an internal cycle, of course, on this terrestrial part. Also, plants take up phosphorus out of the soil and give that away, partly away to the higher food web. It's decomposed partly as inorganic phosphorus into the soil, and if it's too much into the soil, then it's going over this road in the river also, and it is then transformed into animal phosphorus, so there is some phosphorus is stored, and that gives then organic wastes and remain, which are accumulated in the sediments or taken up in the cycle, which goes then that way around, or going into ocean sediments. Also, this is a big part of organic wastes and remain is a big part, as we will see later, of the phosphorus phosphorus rocks. All right. And here, this is a large-scale cycle. Of course, the phosphorus, which we find in phosphorus mining later, it comes here. It's fed with this one, and it's fed by weathering of land masses and rocks, and also of tectonics on the long-term range. And we have different phosphorus deposits on the Earth from very different geological ages we will see later. And then phosphate will be part of this phosphorus we use here, and that's our problem in the fertilizer to produce food for humans, which are sitting somewhere here or here, you know, the vegan people who we're going to probably sit right here, and the meat eaters sit here, okay? We could put that in there, and then it goes into the rivers, and it goes to the deep ocean, and that's what I mentioned earlier. That is a way, a redistribution of a resource to a location on our globe which are hard to come by and get back. So there is one question in, and make this very much closer cycles without the way out here to the ocean depths here. Okay, the next one here, we have a short view on the marine cycle in the marine realm. It's basically the same. There's some inorganic phosphorus is taken up by plants. Plants are taken up by animals, and the animals excrete phosphorus-containing fecal pellets or excrements. And it comes what is much more important in the marine realm as compared to the terrestrial ecosystems is that dissolved organic phosphorus is produced as a byproduct, in which can't sink down to the sediment. So, and it is a kind of phosphorus reservoir in the pelagic, in the water column, and also in the surface water with the phytoplankton, with the light takes then up the CO2 and so on again, and this has easier and more complex components, which are cost some energy to split them up and make them available for plant production. Very important are here the heterotrophic protozoans, which eat the bacteria which work on this, and you have then here the zooplankton, and then maybe the fish in here also, and several steps of the food web which you can drive in here. And a part of this is sinking as dead organism, as debris, or sinking very fast as fecal material. And this DOP here, this dissolved organic phosphorus in the water column of the marine result, that comes from liquid excreta mostly. Okay, and then we have, of course, burial in the sediment. We have some reflux from the sediments, which is in the deep ocean, doesn't help us very much in production, but in shallow waters, for instance, when the light goes down to the bottom, to the sea bottom, in shallow bays here in the Baltic Sea, you would see that some reflux comes from the sediments and is then going into the cycle again. Then we have another important mechanism which brings phosphorus from the deep sea. That's the upwelling in the so-called upwelling areas, the western coast of the continents, like in the Canary currents, in the Benguela currents, or the Peru currents, and that brings some phosphorus up. That's very phosphorus-rich water, which is also in geological times also a source for phosphorate deposits. and in the solubility of phosphorus is very high in colder water. It's not so good in warmer water, and so it is very rich water with surface sometimes, and then goes as phosphoric acids here in this marine cycle again. Okay. And the more we fertilize and the more phosphorus we put in the sea, the more of that will be this part also in going back into the deep sea. It's not the same percentage on any quantitative level, but it will be more. Okay? Okay, a very important thing of the phosphorus mineral cycle is it's absorbing on ferrous to iron oxides, which have very large surfaces, and the adsorbing of phosphorus that is very efficient, and the binding capacity of the oxides is very high also. This adsorption and then the binding of that increase with increasing temperature. It goes more to that, it's less in solution, with decreasing salinity at low pHs, and with increasing mineral content and mineral content. And phosphorus also accumulates on surfaces of other material, and everything what makes it bound to a particle is prone to sinking out of the surface and may be lost in our nowadays cycle, not necessarily. But it's followed by sinking and deposition, but there is a lot of dissolution and precipitation in the near of the sediments, and so that's not just a straight line down, it is some circling around also at that part of the matter cycle of phosphorus. A particularly thing is here that the phosphorus or the phosphate comes in as particles in the oxic environment when you have iron 3. When it's called to ferric iron, then phosphorus will be participated. What we see here, it's from you can take that from other areas also, but this is from the Gotland Sea and the Baltic Sea. We have here 0 oxygen, and minus oxygen means hydrogen sulfide, and we here have oxygen. And when some water is exchanging there, you see a water exchange is there, or when the water is aerated by North Sea water, then you see that phosphorus the phosphorus concentration goes down. There's no uptake of phosphorus, so it's precipitated to the sediments. If the sediments getting anaerobic, then when there is no water exchange for a long time, the iron 3 is reduced to ferrous iron, and that is soluble. Phosphor goes into solution and is for short time more available for plant uptake. This is not a switch on, switch off, so there is some overlap. But if this happens in very deep water, like in 200, 300 meter, and you have a halocline, then that doesn't help the surface. It takes too long before it's up to the surface, and then it's oxidated and reprecipitated again. So that's a reason why you have this dissolution and reprecipitation in phosphorus due to the reduction of ferric iron to ferrous iron. So this is some numbers to the global phosphorus reservoirs and turnover times. If you look on most of the following slides, what the reservoirs of phosphorus is, what the turnover time is, don't kill me, they are all different. It's all from different authors, but I have put them together. But what we see here is very clearly, this is 4 times 10 to the 9 teragram. Yeah, is it in tons? No, it's teragram, yeah. And that will be here, 1 teragram is 10 to the 6 tons. So this is quite a big load of phosphorus. It's sitting in the sediment, and we see that this is the most largest phosphorus reservoir in our Earth, and of course has a long residence time of hundreds of millions of years, so in really geological time. That has to do with plate tectonics and uplift and so forth. Then the next one is inland in the soil, and in the deep ocean, that's very much less than, and then it becomes the part which is in the living, in the terrestrial biota in the surface is a very, 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 very little part of the phosphorus reservoirs. We have virtually no atmospheric input. There may be some phosphorus coming with Saharan dust or desert dust, just absorbing to some particles in there, but there is no way that the atmospheric transport to the sea is so important as in nitrogen, because nitrogen has these gas phases, and this can be very much better transported with through the atmosphere. Burial in marine sediments is the most important thing. Phosphorite of marine origin is brought back to the ocean in the form of fertilizers. So that has been sitting for millions of years in some phosphorite formations, and we bring that back with the excess fertilization in agricultural production. Okay, how is phosphorite, which is the phosphorus rocks from which the phosphorus is mined, how is it formed? We see here this white stripes here is white phosphorus. That's one form, but one of the isotopes of phosphorus, which when it comes to light, it becomes yellow. And white and yellow is the same. The other form is the red phosphorus, but that's very seldom. This is in the Negev desert in Israel, and here you see phosphate in an old phosphorus mine. It's a marine precipitation place here. Okay. Here we have some pictures of how we find the phosphorus. It's palladial phosphorite. This piece is 4.6 centimeters. Big palladial means grained. It's in one rock, but it's grained together. And we have here a fossilarious pilloid phosphorites, 4.7 centimeters big. That has a lot of foraminiferous shell here in the deposit here. This is in Idaho, USA. It comes from the mid-Permian time. This one is from China, and it's in the lower Cambrian, and this is a form. Staphylit is a fluoroapatite. There's a little deposit in Germany. It's from Devonian. It's cut into or enclosed into Devonian limestone. These are the forms in which the phosphorus is found in the sedimentary rocks and also in the igneous rocks. And that's the chloroapatite, the fluoroapatite, the hydroxyapatite, and the carbonate fluoride apatite. That's this one. Here we have a piece which comes from the limestone of corals, comes from old corals, and that is this calcium this calcium hydroxyapatite is is the most abundant in coral limestone, in geological coral limestone. In living limestone there are more forms of phosphorus. This is as I said, it's a calcium phosphate rich in marine rocks, mostly a mixture of apatite minerals. Yeah, and those rocks which are mined now, those phosphorus rocks which are mined now has 15 to 20% of the rock material is phosphorus. So that must have been very productive marine areas to accumulate so phosphor-rich stones. Okay, so this is okay. And next one, show us where comes the material from. I mentioned parts of it earlier. Phosphorus is accumulated at the seafloor by some atmospheric dust, which over the million years brings a little bit of precipitation, but it's not very much. Glacial runoff brings something into the ocean, cosmic activities, hydrothermal activities, volcanic activities, and deposition of organic matter, as mentioned before. That is of what the phosphorite rocks are made, and dependent on this on the different compositions of the phosphorus, you can decide, or you can differentiate the phosphorites into certain, according to their content. The primary source is continental weathering and river flow to the ocean. More than this here. And how comes it that this deposits evolved? This is phosphorus sedimenting in relative shallow waters on shelf seas in warm areas, because it's not going into solution so easy in warm waters. These shelf regions are reached also by upwelling of phosphorus-rich waters, and which has a high, the cold water from the depths has a high solubility. The phosphorus solubility is higher, and this is then precipitated in shallow warm areas, and it comes to the surface to tectonics. There are some subsurface phosphorite deposits, but those which are mined at the surface and are not even on the Earth's surface, they are from lift up. They are former shallow continental seas during our history of the Earth. Okay, the most important driver in phosphorite formation are biological processes, which are from the quantity then almost as important as the not predominant, but as important as the rock weathering. And that is what I mentioned earlier also, that's plankton, terrestrial phases, which are enriched in organic matter, and also debris, biological debris, bones, chitin, calcareous skeletons, and other hard parts of organism. They come together into the phosphorites. Or there is a phosphorite formation as a product of giant bacteria. And that was discovered 10, 15 years ago. And everybody thinks that's the way out, cultivating this bacteria, but we will see. Okay, chemical formation of phosphorus, of phosphorites, is through direct precipitation of things and by metasomatic inclusion of P into limestone sediments. That's also not unimportant. And this, what I mentioned, are often through dissolution and reprecipitation, so-called secondary deposits. That's a whole deposit which once going through the dissolved phase again, or lots of it is going to the dissolved phase again. Okay, there is, of course, these processes are going on, but as I mentioned earlier, that we have a lot of the human impact on the system is accelerating natural processes and take out more than the natural production will be. So this is long time scales that this phosphorus is built up, and we use it up in no time in geological scales, right? Phosphatization, that process is not that's not very abundant, it's not very often, but it happens in the old guano deposits on the shore, that they are out of that with rain and with waves, they are leaching phosphorus fluids which are very concentrated in phosphate and reprecipitate in limestones. That is a form which is very important again, because not any longer, because the guano is harvested almost completely. So in the 40s it was used up, and not much is formed in so few years after that. Now we come to the megabacteria, It's called Theomargarita namibiensis. And this bacteria is large. It can be 750 micrometer. Right, so if you compare that to other bacteria, it's an elephant in the bacteria world, okay? It comes in chains of 20 cells, packed in slimy substances, and it lives in the sediment up to 14 centimeter deep. And these sediments are off the Namibian upwelling area, and they are highly anoxic. And it's really very soft anoxic sediments, but there is every now and then resuspension on the sediments, and then these bacteria are resuspended in the water column also. And these are anoxic, anaerobic bacteria which can stand oxygen. So they tolerate oxygen, and that's very seldom. And they have 90% of the body volume is a vacuole. So when they are lifted up in the sediments by resuspension, they take up nitrate, phosphorus, oxygen, phosphorus, and H2S. And they can take so much up from a short excursion in the water column, they can live from that vacuole for 50 days. Okay? And they go back, and then sometimes they fall back into the sediments again. So they oxidize H2S, which is oxygen here from nitrate, to S0. The phosphorus is stored as polyphosphate and degrades under anoxia in the sediment with a very high energy gain. Okay, the role here of the sulfur cycle in this role plays for a role, it's not quite clear. But anyhow, they go back into the sediments again. You set up, and what is surprising also, that they can live without this excursion into the aerobic environment. They can live for years without coming out of the sediment. So it's a fantastic new organism, and it is such an intensive phosphorus cycle there, that or metabolism, that you have 300 micromole of phosphorus in pore water of the sediment. Normal is 20, 50. Okay, the phosphorite, which is formed there, is 5% of the sediment dry mass under this bed, and it's a hydroxyapatite. The biomass of this bacteria in the sediment is up to 200 grams per square meter, which is enormous high. And so that one may think that the phosphorus deposits may have been also formed by such bacteria over the long periods when we had changing anoxic or when the world became aerobic and the anaerobic areas were much larger than now. Up to now, this has only been found off Namibia, near Luderitz at 27 south to 27 20 south to 27 south, from Walfish to Luderitz, in the very small area along the shore. And that's approximately 400, a strip of 400 nautical miles, and it's only, let's say, the shelf width is there less than 50 kilometers. It has never been found similar. There have been similar bacteria found in Chile under the Humboldt current, but with no phosphorate deposition under these maps. Okay, this is an interesting, very interesting and new part in the phosphorus cycle. And nobody can say but that they have played a more important role globally in earlier time or not, but it could be. Okay, let's now look a little bit for phosphorus mining. What happens here? This is a very old picture, 1900, phosphorus mining in Florida. You see the phosphorus is mined at the surface of the earth. I don't know the word in English for the German word is Tagebau. They day exploitation. That means you are not in the dark in the earth. So that is, I don't know the English word for that. Oh, I forgot it. So you see here, they dig in here 20 meter into the earth surface and mine the phosphorus there. And there is one problem which one has to take care when one is working with that, or when one reads that literature. That is, you must very precisely look into the literature when the mining is the phosphorus rock per se, or the phosphorus out of these rocks. So, and I hope that most of the literature that I cited is the latter, because it goes not of the phosphorus rocks, but the phosphorus as phosphorus is the matter of interest. But one has to be careful there that one doesn't mix it together. Here you see in mining in Morocco, West Sahara, that is the largest deposit in the world, and you see the large-scale phosphorus mining here from the surface into the earth soil dug up. So this is another phosphorus mine in the Negev desert in Israel. Again, you see here the white phosphorus sitting here still, and this is all mined away here. And there we come to a problem with phosphorus mining, and when it goes in exploit new phosphorus deposits, that is what comes with the phosphorus. This is in a present day mining in Florida, in Bone Valley. It's a very large phosphorus deposit. By mining 1 ton of phosphorus, you produce 5 tons of phosphorus gypsum, because you wash that stuff with sulfuric acid, okay? And it's then participated as a slimy, as clay slimes. The big problem of that is that in this phosphogypsum, you find a considerable amount of radioactivity, of uranium and radium. So that's not trivial, it's quite high. And of heavy metals, other unwished components. So that what you are going to do with these things here? Where do you put it? You see the big stacks here. Only for these mines, there are already 16 million tons of phosphorus gypsum sitting in those stacks, and before that mine is completely exploited, there are another 30 million tons of phosphorus gypsum to dispose somewhere. And you rip the soil apart, that 20 meter deep surface mining covers already an area of larger than 1,000 square kilometers. So phosphorus mining has some environmental impact, and it's not clear when you go to other phosphorus deposits, which are not that high in phosphorus content, which are not so easy to mine, what environmental impact that will make. You may expect that a lot of other stuffs will come up there, and it's not only more expensive, but it needs more place to deal with the phosphorus gypsum, and I don't know what is in there. That's not very much literature about that, but it will be a problem in this. So, for what we have seen, for what we use the phosphorus, or what we need the phosphorus for what do we use it? We've seen that already. It's for food production, and that's absolutely major use of phosphorus. This is a phosphorus mining. Yeah, phosphorus rock. I don't know whether it's only the rock or the phosphorus. I will show you that later in a slide. Here you see this little red line here. Can you see that? That's here a little bit red. So that was a guano, which was one of the main phosphorus extra. You know, the old agriculture was just the normal cycling of the phosphorus, the normal what is in the soil, not in rocks. what the plants take up and what you bring with your wastes, bring on it. So that was a normal cycle without much phosphorus, without much phosphorus fertilizer, external fertilizer. And then you took you took away the guano, which was exploited here by 1945 or so. And here you see this little yellow line that was the human wastes, which at that time were brought back on the fields, and also the animal wastes, the manure here that took quite a big role. But now it's this phosphorus from the mining, and you see here it has risen to 20 million tons per annum, the mining, and here to 24. Okay, just keep that in mind for a while. But there is this enormous increase. The other thing is that the agriculture revolution was around here with the invention of the Haber-Bosch-Procedure, which you converted atmospheric nitrogen, molecular nitrogen, into ammonia, and then you could fertilize it like hell. And the major use of fertilizers was then after World War II. Here, somewhere in the 50s, in the 60s, there tremendous population growth we have seen since then, and people wanted to get richer. There was more growing economies where the workmen would have to been fed and things like that, and the diet slowly but painfully changed to more meat consumption than vegan or vegetarian consumption. Okay, and this is some other uses of it which are quantitatively not so important. Quantitatively, steel production, sodium. Here the remnants, wastes from steel production we used to bring on fields. It was because that ash has a lot of phosphorus in it, detergent, etc. And pyrotechnics, fireworks, and things like that. And one very ugly is the military use for fire bombs, which have been used by Germans and British in the last war quite a bit. This is a fire bomb, which a lot of phosphorus in. A lot of these bombs have been then, after the war, have been dumped in the Baltic Sea. And you have to be very careful when you go at the beaches and you want to collect amber. You see here amber, and this is yellow phosphorus. You take that, it's cold from the water, you put that in your pocket, it's nice and warm, your trousers are burning. Now it's really pretty expensive. You better poke with a stick in it. You see, that's not much difference here, right? So, and there are some accidents every year. Okay, now we go to the global consumption of phosphorus, because that's the big theme now. We have just seen that on this previous slide. Okay, 24 million. Okay, now we go here. And we calculate, here we see only approximately 16 million tons now. So that's quite a bit. I mean, that's a 30% wrong estimate. So in terms of how long will the phosphorus, we can use phosphorus to plays quite a bit of a role. Surprising is, and I don't know why that is, I didn't find any good explanation, that in the developed countries, the phosphorus consumption, so to say, has decreased, whereas in the developing countries it has increased. And this is probably due that population growth in the world has been taking place in the developing countries and not so much in the industrial countries. Okay, so that is here, and there's a lot of there's very many of the estimate you find in the literature for this purpose is made by the US Geological Survey, and they find every year another number. We will see some example of that. Okay? So this is the global consumptions by regions in the world. We were talking about annual consumption of 16 to 24 million tons of phosphorus per annum. And here we have by the Southeast Asia, North America, Africa, Europe, and Central Asia. It's a weird listing here because it combines very different economies, you know. And here, you know, here is China, and here is a very poor Asian countries here. So we see, if we add this together, we come on to an annual phosphorus rock consumption. It says rock consumptions. Nobody knows that again, what that is. It is 174 so times to the 6, 174 million tons. When we see now, that's a factor of 10, because we had 16 million tons before. When we now say this have been 20%, when this is really rock mining and not the phosphorus, and the other is the phosphorus, then it would be 10%. You know, here is a factor of 10 difference somehow, and this may be due to that these are numbers for rock mining, the entire rock, and not for the phosphorus per se. But I don't believe, because that's not the case. You want the phosphate which you can use then directly process after the separation of the rocks, right? Okay. So that causes some diversion, and the most of the literature you find, or probably one has to dig very much deeper into it, is very not very precise in their estimate how they have done what. So, and it's like everything, you know, it's good for the press, making a hell of a lot of noise that we maybe in 100 years. You know, so there will be no grandfathers any longer because the phosphorus is gone, or something like that. So here we have a global consumption of phosphorus for certain countries here. China is the biggest user. Then comes the US. That is not use. It's use. It's not the reservoirs. The reservoirs are here the highest. Okay, so that's the use, and we end up with this number. And here we have phosphorus is listed as mineral commodity. It's listed as production of phosphorus in 1,000 tons. That is here. That is 174 million tons, right? Against the 16 or 25 in the other things. Then if we look here, we find China is producing, now this is the production. This must not have been used in China, because it is the production is a global use, but China has exported quite a bit, and Morocco doesn't use anything. So they sell out in West Sahara. They sell everything. So this would be that. So we find here we have 65 million tons of global production or consumption. This source in East Asia, and had in the previous slide has 65. All of East Asia, that much as China, that something is going apart here from the estimates here. And the same is here North America. In this source here has 26 million tons, and has 35 million tons in the previous record. So there's this very wide range of not just percentage, but it's tenths of percent, which this particularly in which this use is varying, and the use is that what decides how long we can still use phosphorus. Now, what was the development in the last years? Again, so okay, we leave this question open with this 10% difference there, or 10%, or the 10 10 to the 1 missing phosphorus, and see what we find. Further in the literature, you find numbers here that the global demand in phosphorus in the period of 1960 to 2007 has been risen by almost 200%. That's really much. It's from 5.9 to the 6 million tons to 17 million tons. The P demand per capita, and here, global average, thus has increased by 38%, which is quite a lot. And the needed phosphorus to produce the food consumed per capita has been risen from 1.9 kilogram per year and capita to 2.6. It's also almost doubled. Population growth in this since 1961 would alone have accounted for 12.7 to 12 million tons. And a shift in diet, more meat and more protein, or that's so called, is would be 28% of the increase. Whatever these numbers here meet, if you calculate that. What came out of this study also is that meat, food production, meat, dairy products, milk and so on, and eggs account for 72% of the entire phosphorus consumption for food production. The rest is all the vegetables and what you can eat. Beside of that would be only 28%. That follows out of these numbers. And beef production of the three is the most intensive P consumption. All right. So very clearly, protein consumption increases with the gross national product. One can see that in very many studies of the countries. And then, of course, there's the most phosphorus used for fertilizer also to produce that protein-rich food. And one calls that the footprints, the P footprints, the phosphorus footprints in per kilogram per capita by consumed as food, for food. That is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's 0.35 kilogram per annum. And Luxembourg has a world maximum with 7.6 kilogram. The US almost 7 kilogram. Europe is a little bit more, and here the former USSR and Russia is a little bit more moderate. We have a phosphorus footprint of 3 to 5 kilogram per capita. And here, China, which was on the lowest footprint in that period, at the beginning of that period, has increased its phosphorus consumption for food by 400%. So that's what, and that all it's always both population increase and change in diet. What the rich countries use more as phosphorus per capita is via food, and what the poorer countries use as more phosphorus is increasing population. Very clearly, it's divided by that. Okay. Here's a very brief look, aren't we, where the major phosphorus rock deposits are. In the world, they are separated. It's not easy to see here. We have here this red crosses are island phosphorus. This Nauru and these islands here in the South Pacific were very, very famous. The blue one is the igneous deposit, and the green dots are the sedimentary deposits. They are scattered here over the world, and these are the biggest here. Then Florida has an enormous high amount. China, and we have seen that before, what their reservoirs are. And these are only reservoirs which are mined and which have this 15 to 20% of phosphorus in the rock. And it's not yet clear, it's not yet calculated in further another phosphorite deposit with lower concentration of phosphorus, or which are more expensive to mine and so on. So now, when the first calculations came from numbers which somebody got from somewhere of the phosphorus deposits and the annual consummation, it came out the phosphorus will last for 95 more years. So that was an alarming news, and the phosphorus prices, jumped up to a spike and increased by 800%. Then there came other, even that was a that was an estimate for the U.S. Geological Survey, but 1 year later or 2 years later they found other values and then it dropped down. But as it is in good economy, you have you think it's something is scarce, it goes up, then it's not that scarce, it's go down, but the prices are higher than before with no reason whatsoever. Okay. So that is really also a problem for the poorer countries of this world. And so now let's look at further here at global reserves. Here we find 36. So we have the use, and now we want to see what is there on the Earth. There is an estimate here for the US Geological of 16 billion tons of phosphorus rock reserves, again rock or what, and this is China and this is the United States, and you see they control, from this graph, they control 60% of the global phosphorus things which are mined now, of the nowadays felt exploitable phosphorus. Now all of a sudden this phosphorus jumps up to much higher, and we see that here that is mainly due to that's another from the World Resource Forum estimated we have a global rock reservoirs of 65 million tons and not of 16 billion tons. So that is a billion tons. So that's quite a difference. And this is because in the previous slide we had for Morocco, West Sahara, only what is this? Only 5 billion tons, and now we have the tenfold. Please, that makes some difference, in the following calculation. And the estimates over the year then comes to an end. And this was mainly due that probably here there were before there, but nobody knows whether the countries give the right amount what they think they still have, because we will see that is a global problem, because there is a mismatch between your phosphorus needs in very many countries and your phosphorus deposit. So most countries are dependent on other countries to get the phosphorus. So it's like water, highly geopolitical method. And these different numbers came here through new numbers which came from Morocco, West Sahara. And one thinks when we follow this number here, then the Morocco and West Sahara and China control 91% of the now known phosphorus reserve. That is quite a bit. So but there are also 84% and things like that, but it's very much higher than the 60% up to now. And now let's look how long will the phosphorus last. Okay? So this is a certain way of doing calculation. It's the so-called Hubbard peak theory. It says when we have a resource which we exploit, then the exploitation until it comes to an end follows a bell-shaped curve. So they use the slope before the peak, which is dependent on discovery. Discovery means knowing the phosphorus you have, and of the consumption, and for increasing infrastructure to discover more or to produce more phosphorus, and that will be then the increase here before it peaks here. So the red, the red one is here, the Hubbard curve, and the blue one is a real curve here. But look again here. It's a production in ton. It's not 16 million tons we have seen before, but it's again 160 million tons. Okay, so what do you need? What is very, okay. And then this peak depends on when you come here. That's the consumption, the deposits, and the industry around it. So then the post-peak development of the curve is just when you're approaching depletion of the resource. What this Hubbard theory is doing here, they just linearize this increase, they linearize this as a decrease. And whether that is right or not, nobody can really say it now. You see, the same they do with the oil, and there are always new estimates. And what is very important is how this curve, or how this phosphorus peak occurs, the consumption peak occurs, is very much dependent on what information you have on the consumption of phosphorus, and more important, what information you have to the availability. So there's all phosphorus things which can be maybe getting, or phosphorate which can be exploited under very much not so good conditions like now, that would change this curve. Okay, and if you remember the first phosphorus slide of consumption, of annual consumption, production, you would see this was the first peak. And you saw on another one you have two peaks here again. So that's I don't know whether that is the right method to do that. And you see here, this is phosphorus peaked in 1970, 1980, and now should be on the declining way. It's not necessarily so. This depends whose estimates you believe. And now we have another author which did the same thing, and we think that he gets this peak from the phosphorus deposits and the consumption. He gets this peak not earlier than 2033, and respectively then the phosphorus will last longer, and you just linearize this here, make the same bell-shaped curve. Whether that is the right, I don't know. I don't understand not all of this theory which is behind it. I'm kind of suspicious about it, because again, this is consumption and reservoir sites are the crucial factor which go in here, right? And you have seen that we have of the one curve we had seen that we had here at this time two phosphorus peaks. So from that previous slide, we should be on the down again, and here we not even have reached the peak. Okay, and that's decades. I mean, I must say, maybe before otherwise I forget it, I must say, whether the phosphorus lasts for 200 years or 300 years or 400 years, I found everything of this eerie, so that life should cease so much in such a short time. If it is 20,000 years, okay, then comes an ice age, or then becomes the geological part of that. Yeah. Okay, now, how long? We take now this estimate, the two different sources which had almost the same estimate. We take that as the annual production. Then we have this US Geological Survey global reservoirs from 211. It's 16 billion tons. This would then last for 91 years. It's very easy to calculate. Okay, then we find here from the World Resource Forum, we found and we have seen that in that one thought diagram, we find 65 billion tons as reservoirs. And with the same use, and not to change in use, that's a completely different thing, because the use may go up, but with the same, that's an assumption, the annual use doesn't change too much, it would last 380 years. There's another estimate of the US, again, of the US Geological Survey from 2012. They said they find 71 billion tons in the reservoirs and an annual production of 190 million tons. And then that will last for 370 years. Looks a little bit different like this here, but it's you don't want to think about it too much. Okay. So now we make a very heroic estimate. We have seen in one of the first slides that in average the phosphorus content of the Earth's crust is by weight is 0.1%. We have 3 to the 19 tons, I don't know what trillions or millions that is, tons of Earth's crust weight. So 0.1% of phosphorus would be 3 to the 16 tons of phosphorus. We take the use of phosphorus of 170 million tons, then the phosphorus will last 10 billion years. And I think then we can't sleep well. But it's every phosphorus. It doesn't tell you what is available and whether it's healthy to be available. But that's just, okay, so you matters to whom you tell this story. That's right. And in the meantime, the US Geological Survey has estimated an additional 35 tons of phosphorus in rocks, which would have less phosphorus, but where the rocks would have less phosphorus, you must mine more, and that will be economical. It's not clear whether it's good enough, and whether that is environmental friendly rock mining is a question. Maybe one will use that, but then the phosphorus will become much more dependent, much more expensive, because you have to put more environmental concerns into it and things like that. But if you have this tons, that would add at that consumption rate we assumed in the previous slide, that would add another 200 years. Looks a little bit better maybe, but still population growth and increasing demand of phosphorus is not included into this calculation. It's like if you would freeze the contemporary phosphorus consumption. Okay, now we look what happens. It is by 250, the world population will be grown from the presently 7 billion people to 8 to 10, maximum estimates are 10 billion people. So that is more than 30%. And at that rate, and if we take that same rate of annual, per capita of annual use of phosphorus, then it will be shortened the duration of the phosphorus, the availability years, quite considerably, by a lot of percent. This will be the phosphorus consumption may increase by 68 to 141%. It depends on very many things where that is. And then there's another problem. The main population increase, says the prediction, will occur in Africa and in Southeast Asia and in some parts of South America. And when you look precisely where the predictions are, in what areas, that are areas with poor soil, with very low phosphorus content in the soil and no phosphorus deposit. That ends up that you have in Asia, you may have to double the phosphorus use to feed the population, which is growing, and to quadruple it in Africa. So these are numbers. They are very shaky, but this makes you again less optimistic. Okay, then it wouldn't be probably not 300 years again, but still it's all in the move, and that you can't live without phosphorus production, or shouldn't live without phosphorus fertilization. When you stop phosphorus fertilization and take the natural circle, 2/3 of the world population would starve. If you are roots, you say, okay, that solves the problem. The earth doesn't feed more people than that. But I mean, that's political, not, you can't do that, right? Okay, is there some hope? We have here a substance which has described since long, but it has come into discussion. It is inositol 1,4,5, a triphosphate. See here the phosphorus bindings. And it's produced by plants when they take up phosphorus. It is a kind of sugar, and it's a structure component for lipids. You have it quite abundant in fruit, cereals, nuts, beans, and our plants. But the thing is, it cannot be digested by monogastric animals, so by most vertebrate animals. It cannot be digested. So that stays in the food. It may accumulate in the feces of, in the waste products of animal farming, of man also. And you may think that is maybe nice, as you do with nitrogen. You know that you have plants which fix nitrogen at the roots, and you take that as what you got, green fertilizer. When you have your crop off, you, I don't know the name, you grow certain plants which, like clover, which has in the roots nitrogen fixing bacteria, and you get some. Maybe one could do that with plants also. So putting grass everywhere and having this stuff then, because it's anyhow not used by monogastric animals, you have then this phosphorus available. It's not much, but it may be. I don't know whether that's feasible or will bring. But you will have to think of everything and test it. Then this was a big thing again. A paper in one of our scandal, that Science or Nature, you know, big shots about the impossible, so to say. People raised bacteria, and they found that a certain strain or a certain clade of bacteria could live when they fed them arsenic instead of phosphorus. Arsenic is in the same periodical group like phosphorus is. Okay, yeah. Now, all right. Well, one couldn't wait. The next one, next issue of Nature, of Science. Absence of detectable arsenal in DNA molecules. All right? So it may be that cells can survive with arsenic, but the molecular biology thinks, the people think that the molecule doesn't fit into all the enzymes and all the jobs the ADP must do. So you would have an AT arsenic wouldn't work in DNA or whatnot. So no substitute. And the other thing is we have 0.1% of phosphorus on the Earth, and the arsenic, the arsenic is only the 53 most abundant element in the Earth's crust, and nobody knows where and whether they are in deposits like phosphorite or something like that. So, and it's much less abundant. So, I mean, this is nice, you know. So, this other paper was probably fun and was fun to write it, but I think this has a better argument that doesn't fit in all the jobs which you have to do with phosphorus, that the molecule size are not fitting. That's what they say here. Okay? Okay, what can be done now? All this doesn't work. And of course, the first thing is minimize waste and losses. All the chain from phosphorus mining up to the food on your table and to the treatment of the waste from our food. It's so much phosphorus wasted, just flowing apart. You can be rigorously save a lot of phosphorus in it. It's shown right now in Southeast Asian and poorer countries, which go back to, and I was at a congress in Malaysia, and they were all agriculture scientists from that area, and they reported that they fall back to their old traditional food production and found out that they the increased population, they can feed with that. They only need much more phosphorus than what I showed before when they do the industrial production or the industrial agriculture we are doing, where you waste so much of things and overdo it, and you ruin the soil with too much fertilization. And now again, I mean the fossil renewable fuel, you know, biofuel is not bad because the remnants in that things is rich in phosphor. You could use it, but that is no healthy agriculture because you ruin the soil. Okay, so that's that could be an interesting thing that you can save here much phosphorus. Yeah, and you must minimize from soils and reduce flow to the ocean. I mean, you must plant much more plants again and things like that, so that they keep the phosphorus on the land or in the soil at the moment, and you don't let them in the river, reduce the river freights and things like that. And at the moment, it's estimated that 15 million tons, approximately 10% of the annual consume, is just flowing into the deep ocean, and it's there lost for us every year. Okay, so growing more plants as fertilizer, using inositol, cultivating Theo Margarita is a nice way. You can do that for your garden, or if you have a balcony and have some flowers there, then you get a strain of Theo Margarita and you produce your phosphorus for your flowers by yourself. But for 10 billion people, it's not feasible. Change in diet? Definitely. When you eat pulses instead of meat, the food production, the phosphorus used for food production would drop by another 10%. That's something already. But I mean, okay. Okay. Take away the money from the people and they eat beans, peas. Okay. Here you can do something. Then one needs very much more detailed inspection of phosphorus resources, of phosphorus use. There are very bad numbers which you read there, so there must be some clear way what can we mine, what is we mine. That's like with oil, you know, you never get it complete, you know. You start then with fracking now and things like that, and you have to see whether you can do such things with phosphorus also, because phosphorus is more important for life than oil, right? Okay. And what is funny also, and maybe the students have seen that this morning, you know, we were talking about phosphorus only in terms of eutrophication. And when in the wild 60s, we used to say, hey man, you've got to see it holistic. Okay, that means why do you treat eutrophication with phosphorus separately from food security? That's the same matter. You know, you should put that more jointly together. Then you can use non-tilling farming. That's no plowing, just, you know, digging the plant that's not that deep in the earth. Don't turn the earth up too much. You know? Okay. And the dependence on a new renewable sources should really need for in future planning for more socio-economic system based on sustainable principles. And this is not just by nation, but for the world. Because as I mentioned earlier, now that should be my last sentence now, is that we have a big international problem. It's the same as with water, that we have nations have a lot of water, other nations need the water. And we have war about water. As we all know, that is an international problem. There is a national misbalance of resources and needs. And how do we cope with that in future? That's a big question, a big geopolitical question. So that was it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have questions? Yeah?
Any questions? Lots of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Only one.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a marine biologist and I do some phosphorus study in the delta regions. And I think that you're quite right with all this phosphorus limitation stuff, but we should also remember that not all the phosphorus goes to deep ocean. Most of the phosphorus is sedimented right in the river mouths.
Yes.
This could be possibly the kind of solution for the problem you described, because if we need some more phosphorus, we just dig the very narrow strip of the bottom near the delta where all this avalanche.
Yeah, but how do you get, when you want to get that out of the sediments, you destroy the entire benthic environment because you dig the sediments up.
Exactly.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not, I said it's 10% which flows into the ocean. That's an estimate again. I don't know whether that's really right. I mean, or it's sitting on the outer shelf, where the remining goes. So maybe much more difficult. What I have been missing by making this talk was I didn't find any information whether there are still submarine phosphorus deposits which are waiting on the next plate movement to surface like the other ones. I would be interested if that would be in some area, but up to 200 up to 330 meters it's no problem to do mining, but then you have the eutrophication on your neck. So, okay.
My question about microstate now. Why did it have this big amount of phosphorus, but our neighbor countries in the Micronesia didn't have it? I know it depends with birds nesting, but why neighbor country haven't got it?
Well, that's like with oil. That's Earth's history. You know, there's plate tectonics which play that role there. And there used to be phosphorus, but the phosphorus on Nauru is used up, is depleted.
Yes, but
you know? It was big, yes. It was big, but it's depleted. But why is there not everywhere this phosphorus? You have everywhere phosphorus in the soil, but also it depends on the soil. The European soils are phosphorus richer than as if you are in the Sahara or in South America or in Africa in some areas. Right? So that you can't help. But there needs to be political things like when it's really so short a time that the phosphorus is available, then you need political interruptions or interferences there like with the law of the sea, something like that to do with the phosphorus also. You just can't say, okay, too bad that you have no phosphorus, go and die. You know, that's what we're not that nice. I mean, look with the water. I mean, these are reasons for wars. Therefore, the politicians have reacted. No politicians in Germany, at least, have reacted to dioxin poisoning and said, "Well, yeah." But climate change, they understood because the water distribution will be changed on the world, and that will cause problems, right? Okay, and that will maybe with the phosphorus also. So it's a highly geopolitical case. Okay. More questions?
The more phosphorus, the more price for phosphorus you have, the more phosphorus will be recycled, definitely. As we have the situation for fish resources, when they're while depleted, we go agriculture going up, and the same goes for phosphorus. When the price is too high, then
that's right.
I try to keep my phosphorus for myself and to recycle it in the water system. For
Of course, it's the same with the oil. But look what we do with the oil. We waste energy and energy. We are not saving energy at the moment. We use more and more energy, and people are not. I mean, Now, you don't have to raise the price for phosphorus necessarily, but raise it for meat. In Germany, meat is so expensive and the meat is so bad, you buy a steak like that, you fry it and it's that size. And it has lost a hell of a lot of phosphorus, you know. Yeah, no, I mean, scientifically it's interesting, and it's also interesting for the surveys how little trustworthy that occurred to me by working on this, that all the global estimates we have, they are very shaky. They can't be better, but you have to deal with that, right? Okay.